Black girl builds a rocket. Elon Musk's response shakes the industry. The night sky stretched endlessly above, a canvas of shimmering stars, painting dreams in the mind of 14-year-old Amara, perched on the roof of her modest home. She peered through a telescope made of salvaged materials. A cardboard tube, a cracked lens she found at a thrift store, and tape holding it all together. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The air was cool, and the distant hum of the city's nightlife blended with the chirping of crickets. Amara adjusted the telescope slightly, her breath catching as she focused on the faint glimmer of a far-off constellation. She didn't know its name yet, but she would someday. For now, it was enough to look, to imagine. One day, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the breeze. I'll touch the stars, even if no one believes me. Her words hung in the air, carrying with them a mix of determination and longing. She hugged her knees to her chest, glancing down at the yard below. It was littered with the remnants of her experiments. Bits of scrap metal, soda bottles rigged as makeshift rocket prototypes, and burnt patches of grass from failed launches. To anyone else, it looked like chaos. To Amara, it was a launch pad for her dreams. The door creaked open below, and her mother stepped out, her voice tinged with concern. Amara, it's late. You have school tomorrow. I'll come down soon, Mama, Amara replied, not taking her eyes off the sky. Her mother hesitated before going back inside. She worried about her daughter's obsession. It wasn't that she didn't believe in her. It was a world she feared, a world that often ignored girls like Amara, girls with big dreams but limited means. Amara didn't see limitations, though. She saw possibilities. Each star was a challenge, a promise, a reminder of how much there was to explore. She had read everything she could about rockets, propulsion, and space travel. Her heroes weren't movie stars or athletes. They were people like Katherine Johnson, Mae Jemison, and Elon Musk. Elon Musk, her lips curved into a faint smile. If he could dream big and change the world, why couldn't she? She leaned back, staring at the vastness above. Her telescope sat beside her, now forgotten in the weight of her thoughts. The stars seemed closer tonight, as if they were waiting for her. Amara clenched her fists. She wouldn't wait for the world to hand her an opportunity. She'd build her own rocket and find her way to the stars herself. For a moment, the universe felt silent, as though it were listening. Before we dive deeper into this gripping story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Epic Story Moments. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Like, share, and comment to support more. Incredible stories like this. Amara's world was small yet filled with contrasts. A neighborhood marked by the hum of activity, but overshadowed by a quiet sense of struggle. Cracks in the sidewalks mirrored the challenges of the families who lived there, including hers. To anyone else, it might seem like an ordinary low-income area, where survival was a goal and dreams were often left behind. But for 14-year-old Amara, this was the launch pad for something extraordinary. The streets outside were alive with sounds, a distant radio blaring upbeat tunes, children laughing and playing tag, the rhythmic clatter of pots in nearby kitchens. Yet none of it reached Amara's ears as she focused intently on her latest creation, a crude model of a rocket made from scrap sheet salvaged. Old soda bottles, aluminum foil, and duct tape lay strewn across her desk, illuminated by a flickering desk lamp that her father had repaired countless times. For as long as she could remember, Amara had been fascinated by the stars. It started when she was 6, during a blackout that darkened the city. Without streetlights to dim the view, the stars seemed brighter than ever, painting a mesmerizing canvas across the night sky. She had stood on the porch with her father, staring up in awe. "Papa, what's that big star over there?" she had asked, pointing to a particularly bright one. "That's not a star, sweetheart. That's Venus," he had replied, his voice tinged with wonder. That moment stayed with her, sparking a curiosity that only grew stronger over the years. While other kids in her neighborhood talked about the latest video games or celebrity gossip, Amara buried herself in anything she could find about space. She would spend hours at the library, flipping through worn-out encyclopedias and outdated science magazines, marveling at pictures of galaxies, astronauts, and rocket launches. Her fascination, however, came with its challenges. Resources in her neighborhood were scarce, and dreams like hers, of building rockets and exploring the universe, seemed impossibly distant. Her parents, while loving and supportive in their own way, were preoccupied with keeping the family afloat. Her mother worked double shifts at a local clinic, often coming home too tired to talk, while her father spent weeks on the road as a truck driver. Amara understood their struggle, but she couldn't shake her own longing. In the quiet moments after dinner, while her mother rested and her siblings watched TV, Amara would retreat to her room. There, amid the clutter of old notebooks, broken toys, and salvaged electronics, she built her dreams piece by piece. Her tools were rudimentary at best. She used an old magnifying glass as a lens to experiment with light, a discarded clock mechanism to study gears, and soda bottles as a base for her makeshift rockets. When her mother brought home old batteries or wires from the clinic storage, Amara's eyes lit up. "I thought you might need these," her mother would say with a tired smile, her love evident despite her exhaustion. But not everyone understood Amara's obsession. At school, her classmates teased her mercilessly. "NASA's not looking for kids like us, Amara," one boy had said with a smirk. Another added, "You should just focus on getting a real job someday, like everyone else around here." Even at home, there were doubts. Her grandmother, who often babysat Amara and her siblings, would shake her head when she saw her tinkering in the backyard. "Baby, ain't nothing wrong with dreaming," she said one afternoon, handing Amara a plate of cornbread. "But make sure you've got both feet on the ground. The world don't always make room for girls like you." Though her grandmother's words came from a place of love, they stung. Amara knew she was up against impossible odds. Her school science program was underfunded, with outdated textbooks and equipment that barely worked. Teachers encouraged her enthusiasm, but couldn't offer much beyond kind words. Then there was the neighborhood itself, a place where survival took precedence over ambition. Her neighbors saw her experiments as strange, even wasteful. "That girl's always messing with junk," one woman muttered as she passed Amara's yard. "She needs to focus on something real." But Amara refused to let the negativity derail her. In her heart, she carried the stories of pioneers who had come before her. Katherine Johnson, the brilliant mathematician whose calculations sent astronauts to the moon. Mae Jemison, the first black woman to travel into space. They had faced obstacles, too, yet they had persevered. Why couldn't she? One day after school, her science teacher, Ms. Harper, stopped her in the hallway. "Amara, I've noticed your interest in rockets," Ms. Harper said, holding out a worn, dog-eared book. The title read Introduction to Rocket Science. "It's not much, but I thought you might like this. Keep at it. You've got something special." Amara's eyes lit up as she accepted the book. It wasn't new, and some of the pages were dog-eared or torn, but it was the most valuable gift she had ever received. She devoured its contents over the following weeks, staying up late under the dim glow of her desk lamp. Her experiments grew more ambitious. Using vinegar and baking soda, she created small chemical reactions to power tiny rockets made from soda bottles. Most of the launches ended in failure. Rockets that fizzled out, fell sideways, or didn't budge at all. But each failure taught her something new. Her backyard became her laboratory. Burn marks on the grass and scattered debris from failed experiments earned her more strange looks from neighbors, but she didn't care. To her, each mistake was a step closer to success. There were nights when the weight of it all threatened to crush her. After another failed experiment, she would sit on her roof, staring at the stars and wondering if everyone else was right. Maybe her dreams were too big. Maybe the universe wasn't meant for someone like her. But then she would remember the words she had read about space exploration. The only limits are the ones we place on ourselves and she would push forward. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara stood in her yard with a new prototype. It wasn't much, just a plastic bottle with stabilizing fins she had crafted from old aluminum cans. But this time, she had calculated the mixture of vinegar and baking soda more precisely. She took a deep breath and launched it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a faint hiss, the rocket shot up, wobbling slightly but climbing higher than any of her previous attempts. Amara watched, her heart pounding, as it reached a few feet in the air before falling back to the ground. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. She smiled, already thinking of ways to improve it. The stars above seemed to twinkle brighter that night, as if they were cheering her on. Amara didn't have access to state-of-the-art equipment or elite education, but she had something just as powerful, an unyielding determination to reach beyond the limits of her world. And as she packed up her materials for the night, she whispered to herself, one day, I'll touch the stars. Amara's small backyard had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could tinker and dream without judgment. It wasn't much to look at, with its patchy grass and uneven fence, but it had witnessed the sparks of her greatest ideas. As the months passed, her experiments became more daring, fueled by an insatiable hunger to prove that her dreams were possible. One night, as she sifted through scraps of old textbooks and hand-me-down science journals, Amara stumbled upon a passage about alternative fuel sources. It was a dense chapter, filled with equations and terms she didn't fully understand, but one phrase caught her attention. Low-cost, high-efficiency propulsion systems. The idea gnawed at her mind. What if there was a way to create rocket fuel from materials so common that even someone with her limited resources could access them? Amara decided to experiment. She spent weeks researching online, grateful for the occasional stability of her neighbor's unsecured Wi-Fi. Videos about chemical reactions, articles on biofuels, and obscure forums discussing propulsion techniques became her lifeline. Each new piece of information added to her growing pool of knowledge, though much of it was trial and error. Her first breakthrough came one rainy afternoon. While mixing various household ingredients in a small glass jar, Amara noticed an unexpected reaction. The mixture began to fizz and release a steady stream of gas. Her heart raced as she leaned closer, carefully observing the process. It wasn't a full solution, but it was a start. She documented everything meticulously in her notebooks. Diagrams of her prototypes, formulas she tweaked endlessly, and notes on her failures filled page after page. Amara didn't see her missteps as setbacks. To her, each failure was a lesson. The real turning point came when she remembered something her grandmother often said. The best ideas come from what's right in front of you. Inspired, Amara began experimenting with everyday, eco-friendly materials, things that were cheap, safe, and accessible. She tested combinations of sugar, potassium nitrate, and baking soda, tweaking the ratios and recording the results. Weeks turned into months, and her backyard became a patchwork of burnt grass, scattered soda bottles, and half-built prototypes. One evening, after countless failed attempts, Amara mixed a new batch of her experimental fuel. As she poured it into the small chamber of her latest rocket prototype, she whispered a silent prayer. She placed the rocket on its makeshift launch pad, a plank of wood propped up by bricks, and stepped back. With trembling hands, she lit the fuse and watched. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud whoosh, the rocket ignited and shot into the air. It wasn't a massive launch, just a few dozen feet, but it was a success. Amara screamed with joy, the sound echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Her younger brother, who had been peeking from the window, ran outside. "You did it, Amara, you did it," he shouted, clapping his hands. Amara laughed, tears streaming down her face. She'd done it. After months of persistence and countless failures, she had launched a working rocket, but her joy was short-lived. As she celebrated, her neighbor, Mr. Peterson, stuck his head over the fence. "Amara, what in the world are you doing? That thing could have blown up," he barked. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson," she replied, trying to hide her excitement. "I'll be careful next time." He grumbled something under his breath and went back inside, but Amara didn't let his scolding dampen her spirit. That night, as she sat under the stars, she realized she needed a way to share her discovery with the world. The next morning, Amara borrowed her brother's old smartphone, which had a cracked screen but could still record videos. She decided to document her experiments and progress for an online science competition she'd read about. The competition, hosted by a nonprofit organization, encouraged young innovators to showcase their ideas through short videos. Amara worked tirelessly, recording every step of her process. She explained her methods with confidence, using simple language to make her ideas accessible. "This is my prototype," she said in one video, holding up her latest rocket. "It's powered by an eco-friendly fuel I developed using common materials. My goal is to make space exploration more accessible for everyone." Her siblings helped her film, often teasing her during takes. "Don't forget to smile, Amara," her younger sister would say, giggling behind the camera. Despite their playful interruptions, Amara felt a newfound sense of purpose. She wasn't just building rockets anymore. She was sharing her story, hoping to inspire others. When the submission deadline arrived, Amara uploaded her video with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She didn't expect to win. She just wanted someone to see her work and understand her passion. A few weeks later, she received an email from the competition organizers. Her video had been selected as a finalist. They were impressed not only by her innovation, but also by her resourcefulness and determination. Amara's heart raced as she read the email, her hands shaking with disbelief. The competition organizers invited her to present her project at a virtual showcase, where judges from various scientific fields would evaluate her work. Amara spent days preparing, refining her presentation, and rehearsing in front of her siblings. On the day of the showcase, she logged into the video call, her palms sweating. She was one of the youngest participants, surrounded by teenagers and young adults with far more resources and experience. But when it was her turn to speak, Amara took a deep breath and began. She spoke passionately about her love for space, the challenges she had faced, and the vision behind her eco-friendly rocket fuel. She demonstrated her prototype, playing a clip of her successful launch. The judges listened intently, nodding as she explained her process. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before one of the judges spoke. "Amara, your work is nothing short of extraordinary. You've demonstrated innovation, resilience, and a genuine commitment to making a difference." Tears welled in her eyes as the other judges applauded. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as a girl from a struggling neighborhood, but as a scientist, an innovator, and a dreamer. Though the competition was still underway, Amara's story began to spread. The organizers shared her video on their social media platforms, and soon it was being shared by others, scientists, educators, and ordinary people inspired by her determination. Amara didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She had taken the first step toward her dream. And as she looked up at the night sky that evening, the stars seemed just a little closer. Amara's decision to share her work with the world was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. After the success of her small rocket prototype, she spent hours editing her video with the help of her younger brother. The video wasn't polished. It was shot on a cracked smartphone. The audio occasionally crackled, and the lighting was uneven, but it was authentic. In the video, Amara stood beside her makeshift launch pad, a humble plank of wood surrounded by burnt patches of grass. She explained her process, her voice steady but full of passion. "This rocket is powered by a fuel I made myself. It's not perfect, but it works. If I can do this with scraps, imagine what I could do with real resources," she said, her eyes shining with determination. The highlight of the video was the launch itself. As the rocket soared into the air, wobbling but climbing higher than her previous attempts, the camera captured her reaction, a mixture of disbelief and uncontainable joy. She ended the video with a simple message: "Who says a girl can't build a rocket? Her brother uploaded the video to a social media platform, tagging it with hashtags like #RocketGirl, #innovation, and #DreamBig. Amara didn't expect much. In her mind, it was just another small step, a way to document her progress, and maybe inspire a handful of people who stumbled upon her video. At first, the video received only a trickle of attention, likes from a few classmates, encouraging comments from her science teacher, and a couple of shares from distant relatives. But then, something unexpected happened. A popular science blogger stumbled upon the video and shared it with their large following. This young girl built a working rocket in her backyard using homemade fuel. If this is an innovation, I don't know what is. #RocketGirl, the post read. Within hours, the likes and shares began pouring in. Amara's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Strangers from all over the world commented on her video, praising her ingenuity and determination. "You're an inspiration to young girls everywhere," one comment read. "NASA needs to hire you ASP," wrote another. By the next morning, the video had gone viral. It was being shared across platforms, with people adding their own captions and commentary. Some called her a genius, while others praised her resilience and resourcefulness. Amara was overwhelmed. Then came the moment that changed everything. Amara was in her room, scrolling through the endless stream of comments, when her phone buzzed with a notification that made her heart stop. "Elon Musk retweeted your video." She stared at the screen, not believing her eyes. It wasn't just a retweet. He had added his own message. "This is the future of innovation. Keep going." The world seemed to tilt for a moment. Amara's younger brother burst into the room, yelling, "Amara, Elon Musk tweeted about you." Her siblings crowded around her phone, their faces lit with excitement. Within minutes, the story was everywhere. News outlets picked up the tweet, calling it a rare endorsement from one of the most influential innovators of the time. Headlines declared, "Rocket Girl earns Elon Musk praise," and asterisk, "Teen innovator goes viral with homemade rocket." Asterisk, reporters reached out, eager to learn more about the girl behind the viral video. Amara's once quiet neighborhood buzzed with activity as journalists and camera crews arrived, setting up interviews and filming segments about her backyard laboratory. Amara handled the sudden attention with a mix of awe and humility. She was thrilled that her work was being recognized, but she also felt a responsibility to represent her community. In interviews, she spoke not just about her love for space, but also about the challenges she had faced growing up in a low-income neighborhood. "My story isn't just about building rockets," she said in one interview. "It's about showing that talent and innovation can come from anywhere. I want other kids like me to know that their dreams are valid, no matter where they come from." Her words resonated with millions. Social media lit up with messages of support. "Representation matters," one user tweeted. "Amara is showing young black girls everywhere that the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning." As the buzz grew, offers of support began to roll in. A local university reached out, offering her access to their science labs and mentorship from their faculty. A nonprofit organization for young scientists sent her a package filled with high-quality materials and tools to further her experiments. Through it all, Amara remained grounded. She continued to work in her backyard, even as her resources improved. For her, the recognition was never the goal. It was a byproduct of her relentless pursuit of a dream. One evening, as she scrolled through the comments on her latest video, Amara came across a message that brought tears to her eyes. It was from a young girl no older than 10 who had written, "Because of you, I'm going to build my own rocket one day. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. The viral moment had changed her life, but more importantly, it had ignited a spark in others. She realized that her journey wasn't just about reaching the stars. It was about lighting the way for others to follow. That night, she sat under the stars, her laptop open to draft her next experiment. As she worked, her mind buzzed with ideas. The journey was just beginning. and Amara was ready to soar even higher. Fame came to Amara like a rocket launch of its own, explosive, fast, and almost impossible to control. Overnight, her life transformed from quiet nights spent experimenting in her backyard to a whirlwind of media attention, interview requests, and offers from companies she had only dreamed of. At first, the attention was thrilling. Amara was flown to conferences, invited to speak at panels, and even received personal letters from CEOs commending her ingenuity. Big companies offered her lucrative sponsorships, and some even hinted at full scholarships to prestigious universities. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, or so it seemed. But as the days turned into weeks, the weight of her newfound fame began to settle in. She barely had time to work on her projects anymore. Meetings, appearances, and endless emails consumed her days. At night, she would sit at her desk, staring at her half-built rocket prototype, longing for the simplicity of her earlier experiments. The pressure to live up to her viral moment was immense. Every action she took was scrutinized. Some critics claimed her success was a fluke, attributing it to luck rather than skill. "She's just a kid who got lucky," one online comment read. Others questioned the legitimacy of her invention, suggesting that she must have had outside help. Amara tried to ignore the negativity, but it was hard. She felt like she was constantly defending herself, proving that she deserved the praise she had received. Her confidence, once unshakable, began to waver. Even at home, the dynamics had changed. While her family was proud of her, the constant presence of reporters and visitors disrupted their routine. Her siblings missed the old days when Amara was just their big sister, not the rocket girl. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Amara broke down. She sat on the floor of her room, surrounded by scattered notes and tools, and cried. "What if they're right?" she whispered to herself. "What if I'm not as good as everyone thinks I am?" Her grandmother, who had always been her quiet supporter, found her there. Sitting down beside her, she placed a gentle hand on Amara's shoulder. "Do you remember what I used to tell you?" her grandmother asked. Amara nodded, her voice barely audible. "The best ideas come from what's right in front of you." "That's right," her grandmother said, smiling. "And what's in front of you now is not just the fame or the critics. It's your passion, your talent, and the people who believe in you. Don't lose sight of that, Amara." Her grandmother's words stayed with her. The next day, she reached out to her science teacher, Mrs. Caldwell, who had always encouraged her curiosity. Amara poured out her frustrations, admitting that she felt lost in the chaos of her new life. Mrs. Caldwell listened patiently before offering her advice. "Fame is fleeting, Amara. What matters is the work you do and the difference you make. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to take a step back. Focus on what brought you here. Your love for science and innovation." With the support of her family and Mrs. Caldwell, Amara decided to recenter herself. She turned down several offers from companies that didn't align with her values, even if it meant losing potential income. She set boundaries with the media, limiting her interviews and appearances. Most importantly, she returned to her backyard lab. With renewed focus, Amara began working on an improved version of her rocket. She wanted to create something that would silence her critics and prove, once and for all, that her success was no accident. This time, she had access to better resources thanks to the support of a local university. She spent hours in their lab, learning from mentors and experimenting with new materials. The process was challenging. There were days when nothing seemed to work and the doubts crept back in. But Amara refused to give up. Her family rallied around her, helping in any way they could. Her younger brother acted as her unofficial assistant, fetching tools and documenting her progress. Her sisters tested the durability of her prototypes, often teasing her in the process. One night, as Amara was troubleshooting a particularly stubborn issue, her mother brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her. "You've always been a fighter, Amara," her mother said. "And no matter what anyone says, we're proud of you. Remember that." Her mother's words gave her the strength to keep going. Slowly but surely, her new rocket began to take shape. It was bigger, more advanced, and powered by a refined version of her eco-friendly fuel. When the rocket was finally ready for testing, Amara felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The media was still interested in her story, and a small crowd of reporters and supporters had gathered to watch the launch. Her family stood by her side, cheering her on. As she prepared the rocket for launch, Amara took a deep breath. She remembered her grandmother's words, her teacher's encouragement, and the little girl who had looked up at the stars and dared to dream. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. With a roar, the rocket ignited and soared into the sky. It climbed higher and faster than any of her previous attempts, leaving a trail of smoke behind. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Amara barely heard them. She was too focused on the rocket, her heart soaring along with it. As it reached its peak and began its descent, Amara felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced before. This wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above the challenges and keep moving forward. The successful launch was a turning point for Amara. While the critics didn't disappear entirely, their voices grew quieter in the face of her undeniable talent and determination. More importantly, Amara learned to navigate the challenges of fame while staying true to herself. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. After all, she had already shown the world that even the biggest dreams could take flight. The invitation from Elon Musk felt surreal to Amara. The man who had once been a distant figure, a name she read about in science articles and watched on tech podcasts, was now extending a personal invitation for her to visit SpaceX. It came through an official email of all things, in simple but direct language. The subject line read, *invitation to SpaceX, Elon Musk. Amara sat frozen at her desk, reading the email over and over again, trying to convince herself that this wasn't some elaborate prank. When she finally clicked open the message, her heart raced as she read Musk's words. Amara, we've been following your work, and we believe your eco-friendly rocket fuel has the potential to revolutionize space travel. We'd love for you to present your invention at SpaceX. Let us know when you're available for a visit. She had to read it a second time before the magnitude of the words sank in. A whirlwind of emotions hit her all at once. Excitement, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This was her big chance to show the world that her dream wasn't just a fleeting moment of viral fame. It was the beginning of something far greater. Within days, Amara and her family were on a plane to California. The excitement of the trip felt like a dream. She could hardly believe she was going to SpaceX, a company she had always admired from afar. The journey was full of preparations. She meticulously packed her prototype, double-checking everything. The materials, the blueprints, and the small, eco-friendly fuel system she had spent so many sleepless nights perfecting. When they arrived at SpaceX headquarters, Amara could hardly contain herself. The sheer scale of the facility took her breath away. As she walked through the lobby, she was greeted by the SpaceX team, engineers, scientists, and even a few familiar faces she had seen in documentaries. They all seemed eager to meet her, and she couldn't help but feel like a star in their world. That evening, she received a personal message from Elon Musk. "We're excited to meet you tomorrow, Amara. You're changing the future, and I want to see it firsthand." The message was brief, but it fueled her determination to do her best. The next day, the big event arrived. Amara was escorted into a high-tech auditorium, where a team of engineers, industry experts, and even a few media representatives had gathered. The event was being live-streamed to a global audience. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of curiosity and excitement in the air. As Amara took the stage, she felt the weight of the moment. The audience was silent, waiting for her to speak. She glanced at her family in the front row, their faces filled with pride and support, and that gave her the strength to begin. "I'm Amara. I've spent the last few years experimenting with rocket fuel, using recycled eco-friendly materials. she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. "This is my prototype, and it's powered by a fuel that I believe could change the way we think about space travel." With a gesture, she introduced the rocket, a smaller version of her previous prototype. Now much more refined, it was sleek and compact, made with the same homemade spirit but polished to perfection. The audience leaned in as she explained the science behind the fuel, how it was created using non-toxic chemicals and recycled resources, all designed to minimize environmental impact. As she demonstrated the fuel's efficacy by igniting a small test rocket in the auditorium, the crowd watched in awe as the miniature launch went smoothly, sending the rocket into the air with an impressive burst of power. It was a simple test, but the results spoke volumes about Amara's innovation. Then, the moment arrived that would change her life. Elon Musk stood up, his eyes fixed on Amara. He walked to the stage and addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but filled with excitement. "What we've just seen is nothing short of extraordinary. Amara's innovation is the future of space travel. Her eco-friendly fuel has the potential to make our missions more sustainable and cost-effective. Today, I'm proud to announce that SpaceX will be partnering with Amara to integrate her fuel into our future projects." The room erupted into applause. Amara could hardly believe her ears. The world's most influential space company was going to use her invention in their missions. Her heart raced, and she struggled to hold back tears. Elon Musk turned to her and smiled. "Amara, you've proven that the future of innovation isn't about what you have. It's about what you can do with what you've got. We're excited to work with you to make space travel better for everyone." Amara could hardly process his words. It was a dream come true. But this wasn't just about her success. It was about the impact she could make. In that moment, she realized that her work was no longer just a personal journey. It was a mission that could change the world. After the announcement, the media went into a frenzy. News outlets covered the story, calling it a historic collaboration between a teenage innovator and one of the most influential companies in the world. Headlines read, "Teen rocket inventor partners with SpaceX," and asterisk, "Elon Musk teams up with Rocket Girl to revolutionize space travel." Asterisk, but Amara stayed grounded, surrounded by her family and mentors who reminded her that this was just the beginning. In the months that followed, Amara worked closely with the SpaceX team. She visited the facility regularly, learning more about rocket science, refining her fuel, and even contributing to SpaceX's missions. She became a symbol of what's possible when passion meets innovation, a living testament to the power of a single dream. As she sat on the roof of her house one evening, gazing at the stars once more, Amara realized that she had done it. She had touched the stars, just as she'd always dreamed. But now, she knew that there was no limit to where her dreams could take her. And as she looked up at the infinite sky, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Amara's legacy was shaped not just by her revolutionary invention, but by the way she inspired countless others to chase their dreams. After her groundbreaking partnership with SpaceX, the world took notice, not only of her remarkable rocket fuel, but of her story, her perseverance, and her undeniable talent. It was as if a light had been cast on a new generation of innovators, particularly young girls and minorities, who had long felt unseen or unsupported in the world of science and technology. Amara became a symbol of hope for anyone who had ever been told that their dreams were too big or too impossible to achieve. Her journey was covered by global media, and she appeared on numerous talk shows and podcasts, sharing her story and the lessons she had learned along the way. But Amara remained grounded. She never sought the spotlight for herself. Instead, she used her platform to amplify the voices of others who, like her, had dreams that were waiting to be realized. In one of her interviews, she spoke passionately about the importance of diversity in STEM fields. "Innovation doesn't come from one type of person or one background," she said. "The more diverse our thinking, the greater our ability to solve the world's biggest challenges." Her words resonated with young girls everywhere, especially those from underrepresented communities. They saw in Amara a reflection of their own potential, a reminder that their voices and ideas mattered. Social media exploded with stories of young girls building rockets in their backyards, coding apps, and pursuing careers in science and engineering. Amara became not just an inventor, but a movement, a catalyst for change in how the world viewed girls in STEM. Schools invited her to speak at career days, and she became a role model for aspiring scientists. Her visits were full of excited students, eager to ask questions and learn from someone who had once been in their shoes. Teachers and parents shared her story with their children, emphasizing the importance of persistence, creativity, and the belief that anything was possible. Even large organizations and educational programs recognized her as an advocate for young girls and minorities in STEM. She partnered with schools and nonprofits to create scholarships, mentorship programs, and workshops designed to help students from all backgrounds pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Her efforts to foster inclusivity and diversity in STEM didn't stop there. She worked with government initiatives, encouraging policies that would provide greater access to education in underserved communities. She spoke with tech companies, urging them to prioritize hiring more women and minorities, not just for the sake of diversity, but because the world needed fresh perspectives and ideas to tackle the global challenges ahead. Despite all the recognition, Amara's true passion remained in her work. She spent hours refining her rocket fuel, ensuring that her invention could be integrated into larger missions, from space exploration to sustainable energy solutions. She continued collaborating with SpaceX, contributing to the development of technologies that would one day make space travel more sustainable. Her dream wasn't just about rockets. It was about making a tangible impact on the future of humanity. Amara knew that her innovations could pave the way for cleaner, more efficient technologies that would benefit not only space exploration, but also life here on Earth. The day arrived when her rocket, now integrated into a SpaceX mission, was ready to be launched into space. This mission was a milestone, not just for her invention, but for the next generation of thinkers and creators that Amara had inspired. The launch would carry her eco-friendly rocket fuel into space, a testament to how far she had come and a sign of how far others like her could go. On the day of the launch, Amara stood with her family and friends at the SpaceX launch site, her heart pounding with excitement and pride. The countdown began, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had brought her to this moment. Her family, her teachers, her supporters, and most importantly, her own unwavering belief that anything was possible. As the rocket launched into the sky, Amara couldn't hold back the tears. She watched as it soared higher, climbing into the vast expanse of space, where it would become a part of history. The rocket wasn't just a project anymore. It was a symbol of everything she had fought for: her dream, her determination, and her belief in the future. Tears streamed down her face as the rocket disappeared into the clouds, her eyes fixed on the sky, knowing that her work had only just begun. Amara turned to her family, her voice trembling with emotion. "We did it. We really did it." Her family embraced her, proud and overwhelmed by the incredible journey they had all been a part of. In that moment, Amara knew that the sky was never the limit. The true limits were defined by the boundaries of imagination, determination, and the belief that no dream was too big. As she gazed up at the stars, she whispered softly to herself, the sky was never the limit. And with that, Amara's legacy was sealed, not just as a young inventor who changed the world, but as a beacon of hope and inspiration for future generations.